Hi, old guy here. So today we're going to rebuild an outer CV joint. We're going to take it apart, put it all back together, clean it up. I'm not going to show you how to clean it up because that's up to the person who cleans it. I use brake fluid. But we're going to take it apart, put it back together. So this is what we got. This is basically 90% of the tools you need to take apart a CV joint. Got the CV joint. This is an egg carton. It's for putting all the balls in. You got your grease. In this case, it's GKN, molybdenum disulfide. You got a socket with tape on the end. You got a little brass knocker or drift, some rags, and a way to mark your CV joint. And we'll get into that in a minute. But otherwise, this is all you need. I mean, it's a greasy job, and it's dirty and everything else, but it's not that hard to do. And instead of buying a new one of these, which for a GKN or a Lowbro is a lot of money, you just repair the CV joint. As long as there's no gouges in the cage or anything, you're good to go. Okay, one of the things I like to do is I mark my CV joints. This is a little round end diamond ball. I mark it here, I mark it here, I mark it here, I mark it here, and I mark it on here and here. The reason I do that is that way when I go to take the balls out and put them back in, they go back in where I took them out. I feel like if the balls are set in a cage, they might make a little bit of a groove, but they get a set, so that's why I mark it. Now the first thing you want to do is, all you have to do is you pivot this up and you get a little screwdriver and you pry the ball out. That's number one. You put it in your egg crate and you come over and you do number 4. Then you do 2. Now sometimes this will get stuck when you start taking balls out. So sometimes you have to hit it. So you take this. Yeah, I got a little ahead of myself. There we go. Oh, no, we're not. Okay, so we're having a problem with number 5. Whatever you do, don't use metal. So what we're going to do now is we're going to try and get this. By beating it around a little bit, I was able to get to number 5. That leaves 2 left. Now it gets difficult, so we're going over to number 3. And we got 6 left. Now, what we have to do is we have to take out the cage. So you pivot it around until you find the spot that it comes out. This one doesn't want to work too well. And the cage comes out. So now you can rotate this and you can pull out the center. Again, you rotate it around where it's going to come out. And this is all right. This shows how tight this thing is, okay? And this is a good thing. Voila. So we got all our pieces. Now we have to clean everything. Okay, now I've got this CV joint all cleaned up, and I wanted to show you the marks I made, because with all the grease and everything else over by the vise, you probably couldn't see it. So first off, there's 2 marks here. That signifies this ball is number 1. Next up is the cage. We got 2 marks on it, here and here. They're very light, they're not very much, but that shows that this cage is going to go in like that. And then last of all, we've got 2 marks on this one. This does 2 things. As you can see, this is not the same on both sides, okay? And neither is the CV joint, the inner cage. So you've got your 2 marks here and here. So when you put it all back together, it's going to sit like this. Okay, when I put the outer part of the CV joint back in, I made sure this was number 1. Now, I didn't clean the balls with brake cleaner because I didn't want to make it so I didn't know which one was which. This was 1 through 6, this is 1 through 6. So basically I just wiped them off and put them in this milk carton. Another thing I didn't show you before on the bench was this. This is molybdenum disulfate paste, okay? I like to call it my assembly lube. So just like you'd use assembly lube when you're building a motor or something, I like to build my CV joints with this. It's just called a lube. So what you're going to do is you're going to coat the surfaces that the balls are going to ride in, which is basically this areas and around here. You're going to coat all that. And it doesn't matter. This is basically the same stuff you're using for the grease. You're using my molybdenum disulfite grease, or at least that's what I do. I don't use synthetic. So you're getting all those surfaces primed or lubricated. And then you're going to grab, sorry about that, hit the overhead arm again. You're going to grab your cage. You're going to lube it basically around that part, because that's where the balls go. If you're a little sloppy, it doesn't matter. Then you're going to take your inner cage and you're going to do the same thing. You're going to coat it. Now, the cage rides on that sometimes, but not usually. So you're just basically, lubing the grooves. This is always a lot easier with another person, okay? But I don't have anybody today, so we're doing it ourselves. So after you do that, you take your cage and you want to find your marks, but it really doesn't matter. You just get that inner cage in there, the inner piece, and then you find your marks. There's the 2 marks, okay? And you find your marks on here. They're here. I think they're there. Yeah, okay. They're there and there. So that means we're going to want to twist it around so it's in the right general area. So just to make sure, we're going to wipe it off. Okay, there's a mark. And there's the mark. 2 marks there. We got 2 marks here, so we pivoted around a little more. Now the fun part is getting this back in here. You just have to kind of go around till you find out where it's going to work. And then you're going to need to twist it so that these marks on everything are lined up with the outer part of the CV joint. And you line up the cage. You line up your 2 marks for that. So this is all number 1. So again, we do it backwards. So the first thing we're going to put in is number 6. All right? 6 is over here. So we tilt that up, pre-lube our ball, and stick it in. Then we're doing number 3. I know this is a little slow, but I'm giving you a step-by-step, okay? That way you understand. And we come over here. You don't want to go too far, but you need to pivot this up. And again, if you need to, you grab your bass drift and you pry it up, okay? And you only want to go up just enough to get the ball in. Is that enough? Nope. Okay. That was too far. It didn't go, you got to do, this is kind of tricky sometimes. You push down on the outside, but you want to make sure that inner cage doesn't go too far, or you can't get the ball in. Nope, still can't get it, huh? All right, we're just going to stick it in there and see if we can get it. Oh, we got it, okay. Every time I do this is something new. Sometimes you got to tap it around to get shit to work, all right? Now, we're going to do number 5. And we're going to do number 2. And we got number 3. And finally, we're going to do number 1. Hey, our CV joint is back together, all right? So what we need to do now is we need to grease it. So that'll be our next step. Okay, now you've got your CV joint done, and it's all assembly lube and everything. Now with this particular type of CV joint, you need to put the bolt back in it. Okay, if you have one that uses a nut, you're not going to need the bolt. But what the bolt does is it plugs the hole down in the bottom. Now you'd think, since we're going to put grease in it, that this is the dirtiest part. It's not bad. All you need is a tube of grease. All right, this is GKN grease, and this is a GKN CV joint. And you need a socket. You need a socket that barely fits down in here, okay? Because we're going to press up the grease. So you want a socket, you put tape over the end of it, and you've got it. So you take this pouch, you cut off a corner, and you just squeeze the grease down the center. You want to get it as far down as possible. And then you fill it up, okay? Then you take your socket and you just press it down in the center. What this does is it gets the grease down in. Now granted, that went right in, and we're not going to see anything for a minute until we get more grease in it. Okay, so you squeeze more grease in it. You take your socket and you press it down in it, and you pull it back out. Eventually, we're going to see the grease start coming up around the balls. Now, there's other ways to do this. You can use a needle valve on a grease gun to get in and around the balls, but I found this is the most effective. Okay, now, see, this doesn't slip in as easy, so we're going to be pushing down, and you're going to see that it starts to come up around the balls. See that? So we're getting a little tighter, and this basically takes one package of grease. Now this grease packet, if you happen to buy it from FCP Euro, it's $2. And this is the grease that was originally in your CV joint. Now see, if you look at it, you see all that stuff coming up around the balls? And it comes up fairly evenly. Not perfect, but fairly evenly. That socket's getting dirty, huh? And you just, as much as you can, you know, you squeeze it down. And you put it in the center. It's really very simple. Now we've got grease up around all the balls, and you're going to want to take it and you move it around, okay? And you get everything lubed. Now between the assembly lube or the molybdenum disulfate paste in this, you're going to be fine. And what I do is I take this excess grease, and I don't have the jar with me right now, but I put it in a little jar. Basically, that CV joint's done. Okay? And this is how much grease I got left over. Your CV joint has been redone. Now, what I do to preserve my CV joints so they don't get greasy, I put them in a Ziploc bag. Seal the top, then when I'm ready to assemble my axle, everything's still clean. And it doesn't matter if you get a little grease down in this part. It's not going to hurt anything. This is my thoughts. This is what I do. You don't have to.